Smith, would you do the invocation and follow up the pledge, please?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Father, thank you for the day that has been given to live and enjoy a beautiful day. Thank you for our Board of Supervisors that are committed to serving Grayson County. We pray that you'll be with us in this meeting tonight, guide our thoughts, and all we do, we'll be ever grateful to you, for it's in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Smith. If everybody's looked over the agenda, I'll look for motion to approve. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda and consent agenda?
So moved, Supervisor Hayes.
Heard Mr. Hayes approve. Didn't hear a second.
Second.
Okay. Motion second, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, was the second by Supervisor Revels?
I believe that was what I heard.
Yes,
Thank you.
That's correct.
Okay. We'll go to new business. First on the agenda is the board appointment.
Yes, Chairman Belton, we have for the Mount Rogers Planning District Commission, my term is expiring on June the 30th of 2020, and Supervisor Revels and I had a chance to talk this morning, and he has graciously agreed to step into my place on that group so that I can cut down a little bit on the number of committees that I'm on, and I greatly appreciate that, unless he's changed his mind. Are you still willing to do that, Tom?
Yes, I am.
Thank you very much. And then Pete Hall, our treasurer, his term expired on May 31st, and Mr. Hall no longer wishes to serve. Mount Rogers PDC will send a letter to the town asking for a town council member to serve. And then for the, you want me to just go ahead, Supervisor Belton?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. For the Recreation Advisory Committee, I believe we have one more person that is listed that's come in since the printing of this. Is that right, Supervisor Hash?
That's correct. I have an application from Beth Carrico that lives in the Delps Beach Road in Providence District, who majored in recreation in college, has worked with the New River Trail State Park as a enforcement officer, and also as a recreation director in Carroll County. She's now I believe, with People's Inc. That's located at Crossroads.
Great. Thank you. And I believe that's it. Go ahead.
Hey, Shep and John Pant, on the Planning Commission, is this appointment, are we appointing Tom to the executive committee or just to the general overall commission? Your position is actually on the executive committee, is that correct?
That's right. So it would be for the executive committee.
Okay. And do we have somebody, does the county have another citizen that's on the general commission also? Or are you it?
On the larger board, that larger board meets like once a year. I can't remember off the top of my head, but do you know Linda's looking to see if she can find it.
It seemed to me that we always had two. At one point, we had to provide, I think, a minority or something like that. But it seems like everybody has two people on the board, one on the executive committee and one on the larger board. And I just want to make sure we've got all our bases covered with the NPRDC folks.
If you all don't mind.
It rotates. Grayson County only has two people on at certain periods. In other words, Jalax, Grayson, and Carol. There will be 1 year that two of those only have one, or not Carol. There would be 1 year, 2 years that Grayson County would only have one, and then there would be a year that we would have two on there.
Okay. So do we know if we're going into a 2 year or a 1 year at this moment, or do we need to check into that?
It's not our turn. It's not our turn.
Not our turn for two?
Not our turn for two.
Does that make sense, Supervisor Fan?
Yeah, it does. When I was on it, I remember the lady from the county was on the board with me, and then I realized she went off, but that's been several years. I didn't know I just want to make sure that we're covered, and also that
sure.
Tom knows that it's the executive committee that is being appointed, and we may want to reflect that in the board appointment.
Bill,
is that okay?
Oh, yeah, Bill. Bill, if you recall, that's what we mentioned this morning. That's fine.
Okay, great. Yeah, we sure did. That's right. I forgot about that. Okay. Ms. Osborne has one other thing that she wants to tell us about this. Go ahead.
If the county has an officer in MRPDC, then you get an additional representative. So unless, for instance, if Mr. Shepley is a officer, chair, vice chair, secretary, whatever, then Grayson County would have an additional representative. If you are not an officer, you only get one representative, is the way it was explained to me.
So that we're going to have, Supervisor, well, everyone on the board, we're going to need to look into this in more detail and get clarification on it, because they should have let us have an additional person if I was on the.
Are you an officer? Are you a chair, vice chair?
I'm in charge of the human resources.
But that's not an officer. It's it's the way I'm reading it. Now that may be incorrect. We can check into that.
Okay.
And just for clarification.
Okay. We'll get clarification on this. I apologize for that. It's we need to get with them and make sure that we know exactly what Supervisor Rebels will be stepping into. Sorry about that.
Well, and one other point though, if that's their rules, then it behooves us for Tom to become an officer, because then we get 2 votes instead of 1. If you're not an officer, then you're at a disadvantage on some of the things that may come under consideration. That rule seems a little bit potentially unfair. It explains why some localities had 2 people at the table when we only had 1.
Yeah.
It may be worth, Tom, just for your knowledge going into it, that everybody ought to be represented equally on that board, regardless if they're an officer or just a board member. Each county should have equal voice.
Yeah, I agree.
In all those.
Yeah, I concur with that, John.
Okay. All right. Sorry to hold you up.
That's all right.
Okay, you got anything else, Mr. Shepley, on the board of
No, Chairman, we're ready to roll.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I do know that, Mr. Chairman,
okay.
hey, I do know that Supervisor Revels did have someone who was interested from the Wilson District. They talked to us, but I think they decided that they'd rather serve on the Planning Commission, maybe if there's ever an appointment there other than the rec board. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, Supervisor Revels.
No, that's correct. I'm still looking for a person.
Okay, so we still wait till we get that person before we go to meeting. All right.
Linda.
We couldn't hear you.
That's my recollection, Chairman.
Okay, we'll put the rec advisory committee on hold until we get the rep from Wilson District. So we can move on, Mr. Revels, as far as the Mount Rocky Planning Commission.
I so move.
Ms. Sullivan,
Second.
Ms. Sullivan motion, and I think I heard Mr. Hatch second.
That's correct.
All in favor? Okay, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, let the minutes show that I abstained from that vote.
Okay, we have that, and we appreciate your stepping up.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Supervisor Revels.
You're welcome.
Okay, next is resolution, Grayson County Emergency Services. Mr. Shipley or Smith, you want to discuss?
Hey, Mr. Chairman, point of order. Did we want to go ahead and appoint, or did we appoint the lady to the rec board for the Providence District, or are we going to wait on her position?
I think we were waiting until we got all of them before we voted, I believe.
That's what we
okay.
did.
I got it. I understand. Got it.
Okay. Resolution, Ms. Shepley or Mr. Smith, whichever one.
Okay. Mr. Smith, can you give us an overview of the purpose of the resolution?
Okay, I know Mr. Hoyle is they're having trouble connecting, but I think we've got him now. But we do have a resolution regarding the Grayson County Emergency Services, and it can be read when you all are ready for it. But are you ready for me to read it, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead and read it.
I'll go ahead and do it.
Okay.
So this is Mr. Shepley. I'm going to go ahead and read it. Resolution is regarding Grayson County Emergency Services, whereas Section 15.2-955 of the Code of Virginia, 1950, as amended, requires the local governing body's approval and authorization of any emergency medical service organization to operate within their locality. And whereas Grayson County Emergency Services has appeared before the Grayson County Board of Supervisors to request the board's approval and authorization for Grayson County Emergency Services to operate and provide emergency medical service in Grayson County, Virginia. And now, therefore, it is resolved by the Grayson County Board of Supervisors that in the best interest of the citizens of Grayson County, to approve and authorize Grayson County Emergency Services to operate and provide emergency medical rescue services in Grayson County, Virginia, adopted this 11th day of June 2020 in the county of Grayson, Virginia.
Okay, can you explain a little bit about that, Mr. Shepley? before asking here.
Yes,
Okay,
go ahead.
we got Mr. Hoy on the phone. He's on the speaker, so we may have to work with this, but, Mr. Hoyle, the board is asking for an explanation on the resolution.
Okay, so basically what is required under the state of Virginia's law is that any agency authorized to practice emergency medical services under the direction of the county has to be produced by resolution. And this just basically is the authorization to allow the Department of Emergency Services, which pre-exists as a department of the county, to also provide emergency medical services.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, is he finished? My bad.
Yes, he's,
he is finished, Mr. Smith.
yes, Supervisor Fant, he's finished with his statement at this time.
Okay. I have some concerns about this resolution for a couple reasons. One, I have a big head but a small brain, so I don't recall this issue being brought before us in any sort of a staffing process where we were trying to understand the structure and the organization and the funding and all that sort of stuff. And so I have a real concern that we've got a resolution before the board for approval to create a structure or an organization within the county that will require funding and other additional resources when we haven't really had the need laid out in a clear and concise manner for us to be able to make that said decision. The second thing I'm concerned about is I think we're on that road again that we swore we didn't want to go down, that the commission that we created to help retain and train and recruit our and operate our emergency services agencies have not weighed in on this. Now, there may have been discussions as part of all the different options that Mr. Hoyle laid out several months ago, but having spoken to one of the chiefs of the departments today, they haven't been consulted about this particular thing. They recognize that the county's got challenges when it comes to delivering these services, but I think we're on a path to potentially violating the trust that we said we didn't want to do when we created we're violating the trust that we want to retain with that commission when we created it. And so I really have a problem with the process, but also with the message it's going to send, because we haven't properly staffed this and presented it in a way that it makes sense, nor do we have any sort of documentation that I can find that the association has been consulted and consents as well. So unless there's something hidden out there in my packet that I just failed to see, and therefore failure on my part, I'm currently opposed to moving this thing. I think we ought to table it to at some point where we can have a more thorough discussion and understanding.
John, Mr. Chairman, this is Tom. I concur with John, but I do have a couple of questions, Mr. Shepley, for you and for Mr. Smith. I could barely hear Paul, so Paul can certainly weigh in, but I had trouble hearing it. Was this carried before the commission? And has the commission approved this? Hello?
Supervisor Rebels, I'm going to have Paul and Mitch respond to you, if that's okay with you.
I don't care who responds. That's one answer.
Okay, this is Paul. So I have discussed this. I presented it to the board and I presented it to the commission. as an alternative. We discussed the possibilities of the ALS East, the ALS West, and the last conversation that I had regarding this was that they wanted to do a 6-month pilot of the ALS East. In order for that to happen, one of the requirements is that there has to be a licensed EMS agency. This resolution is simply a technical step in order to allow us to get that license.
Okay.
Okay, Paul, John Fanigan, I've spoken to the members of that commission, and this wasn't ever presented to them as a decision that we're going to proceed. They acknowledge the discussion about the ALS possibility in the East and the ALS possibility in the West. But as a reminder, we did not fund the ALS in the East or the West. What this resolution does is create an organization without a structure and without a budget. And I think the process is backwards, fully recognizing that we have potential on the horizon, challenges that we all know with that of carrying out our duty in being in the first responder, especially on the rescue side. But to create an organization without the proper staffing and the proper buy-in, we should have an association member here tonight or several dialed in to tell us what they think. Because the one person I talked to just before this meeting has not heard about this discussion in the last several months, and he's one of the chiefs of the rescue squads in the department, in the county. So to say that we presented it 4 or 5 months ago and now to bring it before the board, I think is not a very solid process. And so I just think we need to sit back on this thing and figure it out a little bit better than where we are right now. I'm just not buying it.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
would it be appropriate to make a motion that we table this so that we can have further discussion, clarify the questions, make absolutely sure we've got all the pieces in place with the approval of the commission as well as administration before we take action?
yeah, we could do that. I mean, I have talked to some of the chiefs of the rescue squads, and they have heard about it and agree with it. So I'm not sure where the lack of communications happened here. I agree with Mr. Hall that this is going to have to happen. And the longer we wait, I mean, as far as the East, we're in dire emergency as we speak. So if we keep putting it off, we're going to wind up without an agency or two. I'm not trying, I don't at all want to micromanage Mr. Hall, because that's what we hired him to do, and I like to, if he's an expert at it, and I don't want to at all say anything that would think that I don't agree or I don't trust what he says. I'm just saying this is going to happen. The emergency in the East and the West, we already know it. And I'm just afraid if we keep putting off, and we're going to get in trouble.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
It's my understanding this is the very first step in this whole process. There's a lot more that has to happen. Is that correct, Mr. Hall?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
I personally understand it's a step and the first step if we agree this is the road we have to be on. As the chairman recognized, there are members that are in support of it. There's also members that aren't in support of it. But we don't have any sort of confirmation from the commission, the organization that we stood up to really do this process. We have a coordinator, not a director, who is supposed to shepherd this stuff, but it should be shepherded with the concurrence of the commission. And that's really what we're looking for. Everyone, I think, recognizes we've got manning and funding issues throughout the departments in the county. But what we don't have is consensus, or at least a majority of the commission that I can find that says, yeah, we agree with this process or this particular move. The unintended consequences are things that we've talked about in the past that we can't lose sight of. And what's the impact of this? It may not be much in the East because of the challenges that Baywood is having, but I think there's alternatives to this option that should be considered, and it has to be tied to what's it going to cost. There's got to be a funding discussion, whether you create the service or not. It should be part of the discussion of what it's going to cost the county, because this move is a move towards a paid service, which we've all tried to. We all recognize the expense of that, and so if you create a service that is going to potentially cause real challenges within the current organization, how are we going to deal with that? That's why I don't see that this is a crisis at the moment, fully recognizing that it may be something we need to do in the future.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question for Mr. Holt, please, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Holt, would you tell us the steps you have to take in order, for us, give us some time if this is the very first step?
Yes, ma'am. I can give several off the top of my head. This licensure basically gives us the option of providing EMS service. It does not provide an obligation to do so. So it gives us a tool in the toolbox, whether or not the county chooses to use it or not. But should we decide that we do need it, it reduces the lead time for us to be able to provide that service. The other things that we have to do in order to make this happen is we have to outfit the appropriate vehicles. We have to hire the appropriate personnel. We have to create the internal policies and procedures for those personnel to operate on. And we have to have a substantial agreement with the host agency, which in this case would be Baywood. We've worked on all of these items, but none of them are at a completion point. And as Mr. Fant pointed out, we also have to have the budget approved to make these issues happen. And that budget has been presented, but at this point not approved. Does that help, ma'am?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I know this is just the very first step, just enables us to provide emergency services. That's all it does, correct?
Yes, ma'am. I'd also point out that it doesn't remove anybody who's currently providing services. It doesn't change any of those relationships. It adds one agency should we decide to use it. I also point out that
Go ahead, Paul.
the point I was also going to state that the organization that we're licensing already exists. The Department of Emergency Services is already a county organization. All we're doing is licensing that department to provide EMS services. We're not creating a new agency.
Mr. Chairman,
well, actually, you are, because you're creating a structure underneath your organization that currently doesn't exist. So, in effect, you are creating a new organization.
Mr. Chairman, this is Tom. I have one additional question. Did the commission vote in the affirmative to support this recommendation?
No, sir.
The majority
it is not presented to the commission for approval. The commission doesn't have the authority to approve this. This is a county decision. We have worked to reach consensus on it and to ensure that they're aware and in agreement with the direction that we're going, but it was not put to them as an approve or disapprove. that's outside the charter of their bylaws.
This is just
Well, I
to
have to tell
give
you, I think that's
operating the license continue to operate.
Okay, so I look to you too, because you've been on this EMS council as long as you've been there, so I'd like to have your opinion.
This is approved just to give those who are providing services the license to continue to provide services. Is this correct, Mr. Hall?
This would give the Department of Emergency Services the ability to operate as EMS providers in the county. Right now, we don't have any providers, so it's kind of academic. But it would give us the opportunity to hire and then provide service with providers. Without it, we don't have that ability.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Fan again, another follow-up. So I understand the step. What I don't understand is the process. And so what you've laid out in all the steps that are required, it seems to me we're putting the cart before the horse. The resolution to create the organization is a simple act of a vote by this board, but it has profound effect. And so why not, as a means to better understand not only for the board but also to the public, present the structure and the equipment and the funding associated with such service, because you're not going to be the one running this service. There's additional personnel that are supposedly going to be part of the department. So why not present that? And if we agree to that, then we go forward with the resolution. But to approve the resolution we seem to be premature from where I sit.
Yes, sir. All I can say is that I did present these alternatives to the board. I presented the budget that is necessary to take the steps in order to make these happen.
Yeah, you presented a lot of options, but you presented a lot of options and a lot of ideas, and we kicked them around. I don't recall direction that said go explore standing up another service for Grayson County. I don't recall that direction. Now, you may have gotten that from the administrator. I just don't recall that as a board decision.
Yes, sir. Hiring ALS East or West, either one or any combination of them would be, in effect, creating a new organization or a new EMS agency.
Yeah. Right, and we didn't fund that. Remember, we did not fund that. So in a way, this is kind of an in-run around the budget decision to not fund the ALS positions in the East and the West.
Mr. Chairman, this is Mitch. Do you want to go into further explanation of ALS East and temporary and the debacle that we're in the East Side?
Yeah, I can. We did discuss the budget item, line item for the ALS East, because they are in the process of it's either shut the doors or we do something. The line item would be a temporary, what was discussed was a temporary, just like the broadband, there's a pilot program for 6 months to see if it would work, a temporary position that would see if they could make this work, and we would have some control in it. And if it did not work, then we have to do something drastic. So this was discussed with myself, Mr. Hall, Mr. Smith, Mr. Shepley, and Ms. Gayhart.
So,
But
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
So, Mr. Chairman, this is Tom. If we approve this and we then make a decision to fund an ALS person for the East, are you telling me that's going to completely solve the Baywood problem? One person?
We don't know. The one person is supposed to have a driver, guaranteed fee on, take calls from something like 8 to 5, no weekends, but it was contingent that it would have to work, and this was a temporary thing. And if it did not, then we have to take drastic measures to see that that's, and it's not just Baywood, it would be an ALS would be maybe stationed at Baywood, looking after Independence and Freeze if need be. But this, like Mr. Hull said, this resolution is just the first point. It don't set in stone that we are hiring someone here or hiring someone in the West, but it's just a formality is the way I'm looking at it.
I guess, this is Span again. I just, we already have Grayson, Galax Grayson Ambulance Service that services Baywood and some areas of the eastern part of Grayson County already. Is it not an option to just contract with them to expand their service? I mean, do we need to absorb all this structure and this concept when there's already organizations that potentially could cover that?
That's been talked about, and we actually met with Galax Grayson, and that is an option. But we're gonna pay more, and if if best scenario, if we could get one person in the East, one person in the West, and it works, then we put a Band-Aid on a wound that's gonna happen. I mean, it's gonna happen, and we got a plan for it. As you know, we're paying Galax Grayson quite a bit of money now, and it'll be added more to it if they take on more territory. Can they do that? I'm sure they can. They can take on more territory, but when people gets to calling for rescue squads like they used to and not scared to go to the hospital, they may be overwhelmed, and we may be buying another ambulance, another crew. I mean, it could get real expensive.
So, in practical terms, is what's being proposed is to put an ALS in Baywood. If that's what is being proposed, why do we need this resolution if they can do what they're doing at Elk Creek right now, where there's an EMT or an ALS or somebody serving there and covering calls during the day and being paid by the department? If I don't quite understand then the rationale behind why the county needs to run a service if there's potential for that organization to be run. There's an organization there that this individual could operate under already. And if it's Baywood that's insolvent because of finances, that doesn't mean that the person still couldn't work out of Baywood and work for Freeze or Independence or some other organization. I'm still hung up on the why does the county need to run this?
Well, I guess, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Hull, but the county would be funding the ALS, and if not, the squads would have to fund it, and that's the trouble. The squads cannot fund it. They've done seen that they cannot pay to have someone be an ALS. I think that's the point of this resolution, is that the county would have a say-so on who's running where and have a little bit of control. I mean, not controlling the EMS system, but just have some control of what goes on. And Ms. Cole, you can chime in here if you would.
Yes, sir. Essentially, the reason we're in the place we are right now on the east side is because Baywood is unable to continue funding their salaries as it currently exists. So this provided a means for us to take part of the salary load from them. There's really no mechanism for the county to pay salary for somebody in another organization. I mean, if we're paying the salary, then they become an employee. At least that's my understanding.
I guess I hear what you're saying, but, you know, if we funnel money to these agencies all the time. And so, you know, let's just say for the sake of discussion, hey, Freeze, y'all are we need you to take over this area, and we're gonna funnel money for you to pay for, you know, that covered service. Why would that not be an alternative then to creating another structure?
If I understand what you're saying, you're basically saying that we just pay salary or pay money into the salary pool for the agency?
I'm saying we give the mission to Freeze with additional resources. That is an example.
Freeze does not currently have...
What's that? Go ahead.
Freeze doesn't have the ability to operate in Baywood right now. They don't have the resources to do that.
I guess, but what resources is this individual going to have, this one person and the driver going to have? The Baywood vehicles, right?
Yes, sir. And the station,
okay.
Basically the infrastructure by agreement.
Okay, so one person and a driver is going to run all that at Baywood. That's your proposal.
That's what's happening now, sir. It's just that it's being done by Baywood.
It's being done by Baywood, but whether the person is, anyway, we're not going to agree, I don't think. So I will cease my question.
Okay. What now, Mr. Chairman?
There's a couple things I'd just like to say, just sort of looking at the whole discussion. First of all, I think the discussion is great. Does it really need to be resolved in order to, was I on the whole time? Oh, it wasn't on? Okay, let me start over. First of all, I have to say that I think the discussion was great, and it needs to, you know, we need to continue to have the discussion. I think there's two things that could be dangerous to us that we have to just be careful on, and that is that we don't want to get influenced if we just have a few people that call board members and to say they're unhappy with the way things are going or whatever, that because it may not be going their particular way. We can't be influenced by that. Having said that, on the other hand, it is very important that the commission be behind the moves and the actions that we're going to take. So I think it would be a good idea for us to do a little bit closer examination of the whole situation and readdress this on the 25th of June.
I support that.
Okay.
Mr. Holt, do you know, when does the commission meet again?
When's the commission meet again? I don't have that in front of me.
What, is it in, you know what month? Is it in July or?
I'm not even sure. We had a special call somebody.
Is it the last Thursday of this month?
Yes, sir. It should be. I'm looking at the calendar now.
vacancy. The next one is the 23rd of July, it looks like. 23rd of July.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I was going to suggest, till we get more foundation on this and more explanation, meetings, time, and whatever, what if we just took it month by month to keep to do what we have to do to keep our agency afloat that during the pandemic we said we would with their issues. Just month by month, take a look at it, do what we have to do until we get this resolved.
Okay, that's, so I guess what I'm looking for will be a motion to table this until maybe, and I would suggest maybe if the whole was at the next commission meeting, if he had the department head, he maybe just sign off if they agree or disagree, then we would know which ones does and which one doesn't.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
I'll make that motion to table the proclamation.
And Mr. Chairman, this is Tom. I second that.
All right, I think I heard Mr. Hash make the motion and Mr. Revel second.
Yes, sir.
To table this. Okay. All in favor, aye.
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 And aye. Okay. Moving right along. Mr. Hull, I want to thank you for what you're doing too. You're an expert on this, and we're looking to you to help us through this. Okay. Next, look for a motion to hold a public hearing regarding the courthouse security fee. Mr. Shepley,
Thank you,
explain that.
I'm going to ask Mr. Smith to give you a little detail on that. And before I do that, though, let me say that this is the reason why boards like this exist. So to have this kind of lively discussion about an important issue that will affect this county for years to come. So thank you to all of you for putting your 2 cents in. We'll put our heads together and we'll figure this out, and then we'll come up with a solution that'll be good for the county. So, Mr. Smith, can you give them a little bit of information on the courthouse security fee?
Okay, our clerk in the circuit court brought this to our attention. Senate Bill 149, courthouse security fees are to increase from $10 up to $20. The addition or increase in fees must be by ordinance, so that's what we're doing. And so that the Virginia Code 53.1-120, and it gives us the right to do that, and we have to have a motion and where we have to have a public hearing on it to do that. But it is her recommendation that we take these courthouse security fees from $10 to $20.
And Mr. Chairman, quick question, Mr. Pant.
Yes, sir.
What does that mean, Mr. Smith? What going $10 to $20? What is that? I understand it's an increase in by $10, but I mean, what does it go for? What does it do? How much is that? What does it affect?
In the courthouse security, if you will notice, there's a line item in the budget that has the courthouse security, and that money goes into that. And anything to deal with the courthouse in security fashions, things that we have to do to the courthouse, that's where that money can be spent.
And that fee is charged to who? How is that fee brought in?
That fee is charged to that fee is charged to anyone who gets a ticket.
Okay.
Will these be associated with circuit court convictions or general district also?
What was the question, Supervisor Hash?
will these be associated with circuit court convictions or the general district and courts?
I was assuming, sir, that it would be with circuit court because that's who presented it to us.
Okay.
That's what I understand too.
Miss Susan Harrington.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to clarify from Mr. Payne. I think that's how it works, and that these are just associated with part of the fines and costs upon convictions of an individual. Is that right?
Okay. Yeah, well, that helps me understand it.
Yeah. And you probably know, Supervisor Hash, how this works better than anyone.
I don't know. I may have been on the paying end of those a few times.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's what they say.
I say that not because you're getting tickets, but because you being a police officer.
That's when the judge tells you to go see the clerk about your fines and costs.
Yes.
So this would be an increase to this. Sorry, fan here. This would be an increase in revenue and expenses potentially in the budget, but not a revenue generated by the county. So it's an increase, and we have to authorize it, but it's not a fee, a cost transferred to the county. Is that right, from a budget standpoint?
Well, it'll be transferred to the county, but it'll be for courthouse security. It's not. It doesn't go into the general fund.
Right, but we're not paying it. It's only generated by the result of some fine or fee associated with a conviction. The county doesn't have to pony up the money. We just have to transfer it.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And all we're looking for tonight is a motion to hold a public hearing regarding the security fee, correct?
Right. Yes.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Fan.
I'll second Mr. Chairman.
Who seconded?
Mike.
Mr. Hash.
Mr. Hash,
Thank you.
On favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. And aye. Now, we got a little bit carried away and it's past 6:30, but if I hear a motion to go into public hearing and receive public comment regarding the proposed budget, fiscal year of 2020 to 2021.
So moved, Mr. Hash.
Mr. Hash, so moved. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Sullivan, second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we are in public hearing.
Chairman Belton?
Yes.
There's a couple of quick updates, if it's okay with you, that I would like to give regarding the budget, if that pleases the board.
Absolutely.
First thing is, we set a goal due to the projected losses that are that the state projected for Grayson County. They projected a loss of about $1.4 million this fiscal year and all of next fiscal year for Grayson County. And what we did, as working through the board, was to create a contingency fund with the goal of trying to put $1.4 million into that contingency fund to offset the projected losses that the state told us may occur in relation to the COVID-19 virus. We were able to get to $1.32 million. We did not get completely to the $1.4 million, so we're still about $80,000 short. We feel like that we will be okay, given that since that time that we set that goal at $1.4 million, the CARES Act has been put in place, and a portion of what we have had to expend that would put us in that deficit is reimbursable through that CARES Act. We're just going through the process of filling out the forms and doing the appropriate legwork that needs to be done in order to transfer that money to the county. While we didn't actually get to the 1.4, I think, you know, our departments and all the different departments that work with the county really worked hard together to try to reach that number. We're very close to it. I feel comfortable that we can go into this next fiscal year feeling that we have a safety net if needed, if the coronavirus situation gets worse. The second thing is we are wanting to, we've activated the Economic Development Authority, or what's known as the EDA, and after conversations with the board, it's clear that it would be helpful to the board to know about the activities of the EDA as we move forward, and they should be quite extensive. We have at least 6 things on the docket to talk to them about next time we come together. But it's also important that the community in Grayson County that we be transparent in the actions taken by the EDA and any expenditures or transfer of money that, you know, to economic development initiatives. And so every month from this point forward, we'll be giving you an operational and financial update on what's happening through the EDA. The last piece I wanted to tell you about is that when it comes to broadband funding, we are creating a restricted fund for the sole purpose of accounting for the revenues, such as the local revenues and the grants and expenditures pertaining to the broadband expansion project. The revenues will then be tracked individually as well as the expenditures by phase or by other specific designation. That way we'll be able to trace all expenditures and revenues and activities that are occurring that are under that broadband heading. There'll be a new line item that is specifically broadband. So I wanted to make the board aware of that before we go on any further, and I appreciate you giving me a couple minutes to fill that in, and we'll answer any questions if you have them.
Bill, how much?
Bill,
Mr. Shepard, this is Tom. How much money how much money have we banked in the Economic Development Group to help support broadband at this point? How much money do we have?
Go ahead, Mr. Smith.
Supervisor Revels, I just asked that question today from Miss Gayhart, and she said she said I'm not able to tell you that yet. She said I'm still working on some stuff, and I don't have a number right now. But she said probably in the next week I will have. So I anticipated that question being asked, and was going to ask her, and she said it would be next week before she could give a number on that.
Okay.
Any more comments or questions on the budget? Did we have anybody on public hearing?
No one for this signed up for public comment on this hearing.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to come out of public hearing.
This is Tom, so moved.
Fant, second.
Tom, motion, and Mr. Fant, second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we are out of public hearing. Next will be County Administrator's report.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Belton. Just a couple things. Update on the coronavirus. We seem to be somewhat stabilized between 25 and 35 active cases in Grayson County. We seem to be fluctuating between 25 and 35. It's important that when the public looks and when the board looks at the statistics for Grayson County, that remember that the health department's reporting is the total number of people that have ever had the coronavirus in a county. So the number that you will see on their website will always increase because it doesn't take off those that have recovered from the coronavirus. We are seeking a regular source of information to be able to give us that all-important number, because that is what we really are seeking out. Is we know that there are about 20 to 25 people that have recovered from the coronavirus in Grayson County. We know that we're still being hit, relatively hard by the coronavirus, and that we need to all continue to practice our safe distancing and not let up whatsoever. I think going in the grocery stores, and I've seen lots of people without masks on. We really need people to continue to wear that mask. You need to do that not necessarily so much for yourself, but for your neighbors. So please continue to practice social distancing, and we will do everything we can in order to try to make sure that we are limiting the spread of the virus in Grayson County. Now, one of the things that through the conference calls that we're on a couple times per week, where we have all the other counties and cities in the state talking about what they're doing and how they're responding. One of the things that is sad to hear, but good for us, at least from a financial standpoint, is that about 40% of the counties in Virginia have had to take money from their general fund already just to offset the losses of revenue that have come in. And we're not in that situation. In fact, we built this safety zone of a contingency fund just to do that exact thing. So we don't know how it's going to play out in the future. We're doing the best we can to try to make sure that we are being financially responsible. The CARES Act should be extremely helpful for us. The actions that we've taken on the CARES Act is extremely complex. We have received the money that we've been given by the federal government for the CARES Act. We can't access that money unless we meet the regulations that are listed over about 50 to 100 pages of detail. And we're Lisa Gayhart and a person that we have on contract, Deb Jones, that is our contracted consultant, and myself are going through all the details on a daily basis to try to find out as much as we can about the areas that are eligible for reimbursement. The areas where we're focusing the most right now would be on the Small Business Recovery Committee. That committee's done an extensive amount. It looks like we'll have an opportunity to try to help our small businesses to stay afloat during this crisis. We're still working on the details of that, but that is one area that we're placing a tremendous amount of focus on, and that we will have a recommendation to the board fairly soon. The other is trying to explore possibilities for hazard pay for those that, Department of Social Services or first responders or our deputies that are on the front lines interacting possibly with coronavirus cases every single day. So it looks like that is possibly a reimbursable area too. So those are the two of the areas that we're focusing extensively on. Obviously, we're focusing on reimbursing ourselves for the expenditures that we've had to put forward for coronavirus preparations and materials and anything that we've had to purchase along those lines. So we feel very confident about where we stand right now from a financial standpoint. We have somewhat stabilized regarding the coronavirus, but it is still here with us, and it's not going to go away until a vaccine is found. We're going to probably have, in that 25 to 35 range until the vaccine is rolled out. So stay focused on staying safe, and rest assured that we're doing everything we can to try to help from an economic standpoint and from a health standpoint, help the people of the citizens of Grayson County to weather this crisis. That's all I had for today, Chairman Belton.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Shep. Any questions or comments? Okay, hearing none. Registered speakers, did we have anybody that had signed up?
Mr. Chairman, we had one emailed in to us today, and I can read that if you'd like.
Yes, sir, that'd be good.
Okay, this comes from Betsy Sharon, and I think she lives in the Wilson district. I'm correct, but anyway, does our rec department plan on having baseball, softball this summer? I'm an advocate for having our kids participate in sports, and from what I understood during the governor's announcement on Tuesday, these youth sports can be played with social distancing guidelines. That would be my first choice if possible. However, if Grayson County elects to not have rec sports this summer, how does that affect the rec budget? I know with the governor's school plans for the next year that our school system is going to be put in a financial burden that may not even be realized yet, because it doesn't appear that the state plans on offering much assistance. Thank you all for what you do. Betsy Sharon.
Okay, would that question be to us or to the rec board? Or to the rec?
Well, I think she is, she's stating two or three different things, in this, that, the baseball, softball, Mr. Chairman, we did meet with our rec director, Mr. Shepley, and myself and the rec director sat down. We talked extensively about the rec program, where we're at, and I have some of my notes here. The 3 to 7 softball was canceled. That's right during when Corona started, and people were already paying in. So basically, he said he could refund the money. I think there was 6 or 7, 8 people had paid. He said he could refund that money or credit it on another sport. Sometimes the same kids that play softball end up playing soccer in the fall. And so he said he could let it go toward that, or he could refund their money. The July 4th pre-K, 1st and 2nd grade coach pitch, 13, 14, 15 baseball, 4-year-old baseball and softball. As you know, we're just a couple of weeks from July 4th. They wouldn't even have time to practice, to get a season in. So that's pretty much out. The swimming pool is a whole different scenario that we talked about. How can we do it? But basically in phase 2, I think all you can do is exercise, swim, and swimming lessons maybe or something. So the maintenance department and the rec director got together on that, and basically it's not feasible to keep the chemical level where it needs to be in the pool for just for that, since we can't open it for recreation pool hours, which is exactly what the kids do here in Grayson County. So that's why the pool, we chose not to open it. The picnic area, he can start taking some reservations in that during the phase 2, and I think he's ready to do that with the picnic area. But at this time, that's the decisions that we looked at, and that's why they were made. So it wasn't a haphazard decision. It was sat down and talked about extensively by the three people that I talked about there.
Okay, good info. Yeah. Any comments?
is there, is there any opportunity for, and I haven't read the guidelines, but is there any opportunity for some, although maybe short duration, but some sort of programs for the second half of July, something like that, as we kind of try to slowly get back into the swing of things, no pun intended?
I know
it wouldn't be the 4th of July or whatever, the standard program, but maybe an abbreviated, some sort of events that might be helpful.
I know Kevin was, he is hoping to get back in. You know, spring, summer, we're kind of out, but he's hoping to get something back in fall. You know, you got football, you got the soccer, and all those things that they play in the fall sports. And basically, he was taking a wait and see approach. How it comes down. How fast do we go in phase 3? What does that mean? And basically take a wait and see approach on can we make this work? So yes, he's open to that if it becomes possible.
I guess my question specifically was any possibility of something this summer before school starts. That's I think the gist of the question about the summer programs.
At this point, I think the decision was that we didn't feel like there was enough time to allow for that.
Okay.
And we kindly let him lead the conversation and on what he's hearing and his expert opinion, obviously, on his thoughts on that.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, that was all the rest of the speakers. Mr. Smith.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Next, Board of Supervisors time. Anybody have anything?
Hey, Mr. Chairman, this is Fant. I just wanted to give the board a quick update on broadband, if that's okay.
Yes, sir.
As you know, last meeting, Mr. Shepley talked about the announcement and by APCO for the SEC approval, and that's good news. We had our monthly broadband meeting last Friday, and just to get everybody's up to snuff on that, where we are, APCO is in the throes of planning for the fiber build. That'll take them several months to get their right-of-ways and everything in line, contractors lined up, but that seems to be progressing. And the chairman is involved on the APCO side, so he may be able to add some clarity to that if he needs to, but they're doing their thing. And then Gigabeam is involved with them in the planning process. I think they're getting together every two weeks to make sure that's aligned. But while they're doing that, in July, Gigabeam is going to present to the board the committee for the plan on how to do the wireless bill for the tobacco 2018 money that has to be spent by next March. So we'll hear that, and he hopes to begin that construction late summer with a pretty rapid completion rate, but we'll know more once he lays out the timeline. So the project is underway. It's in planning right now, but we're getting close to execution here in the next couple of months, so it's pretty exciting. Mr. Belton, any clarification on that from what you know from your end?
Pretty much the same. I'm on the broadband committee with AEP, and we meet once a week, and there's probably 15 or so of us. I put the question out there, we have to have everything wrote down before we can start, and the answer was no, that we can work behind the engineers. They get, mostly our right-of-ways there. for communication cables. There is a project. The first project is supposed to start in Elk Creek, going through Whitful to give redundant power, redundant source. There is from the National Forest that's in question, but we're working on that. But my question is can we get people some broadband before the whole 200 and some miles is rode up? And the answer was yes. We want to get as many people on as quick as possible. The SCC did give 6 months engineering time on this project, but they all seem upbeat that this wouldn't take 6 months to get the engineering done, and we get as many people on as we could. If Gigabeam will just work behind us. So it all sounds good. It's not an overnight thing, but it's a lot closer than we was.
That's great.
So is that all you had, Mr. Pant?
Yeah, that's it, unless somebody else has questions, but thanks for everybody's support.
Okay. I just got a text that EHSL just opened up the summer stuff for the school, and they're starting next week. So any other questions, comments?
I know Montgomery County, they do some fall baseball and stuff. Could we check with the park and see if there's anything that might possibly done with it, since it's basically a non-contact sport? Maybe it could be done at the rec center level.
Sure, we'd be glad to look into that. Which county did you say, Supervisor Hash?
Montgomery County. I know my grandchildren participate in it, and it's the first time I'd ever went to a baseball game in the fall.
Okay. Anything else? Good. Alrighty. We have no closed session. So our next meeting is June 20. What was it? 25th. 25th. So keep that in mind.
5:30.
At 5:30. June 25th. Put that in your calendar, please.
Chairman Belton?
Yes.
I did think of one more thing, if you don't mind.
Well, I guess. Okay.
I wanted to thank the board for offering me. I'm ending my third year as the county administrator, and I appreciate you all offering me a contract, which I have signed. That you'd be stuck with me for the contract is for 3 years. Thank you very much for your support. I appreciate it a whole lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're doing a good job.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else, Mr. Shepard?
That's it from my end. Thank you.
Okay. Look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion adjourned. Second, Pant.
The Sutherland made the motion, Mr. Pant seconded. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Good night, everybody. Appreciate your help.
Bye, everybody.
All right.